Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast, the biggest live streaming freewheeling poetry podcast on the planet. So glad you could join us. We have two wonderful guests today. Denise Duhamel is back. She was first on episode number 86. And for the prompt lines, we have Erin Murphy, who is another two-time Rattlecaster. She was on the Rattlecast 142 and 251. So it's going to be a great show today. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry, and you do too. So please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to start out with our Poet Respond poet today, and Erin Murphy is here. It's great to see you again, Erin. How you doing?
Oh, it's always great to see you too, Tim. I'm doing well.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you back, and I always love it when I get submissions from you because you have the most interesting projects you have going on all the time. In this one, I don't know what Insomnia Chronicles the first 25 are, but apparently you're working on some insomnia issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what these poems have in common is they all have the same first sentence, and they kind of recreate, reconstruct that feeling, that associative feeling that happens when you're sort of, there's wakefulness in the middle of the night if you have insomnia. So making connections among language, experiences, things that maybe seem unrelated, but then maybe all add up to being connected in some way.
Yeah. So how did this poem enter that series? How did it come to be?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times what happens is, and you probably experience this too, you'll have some experience or maybe a story that you've been telling for years, but you don't necessarily think it's going to ever end up in a poem. And that was definitely the case with the baloney story in this poem. But of course, it's all connected to, the time of year, and of course, what's happening this week with the inauguration. I was especially excited that you chose this poem for this week because I know you probably were inundated with inauguration poems. And so I felt really happy that this one got selected. I've heard from so many people throughout the day that they said things like, "This is just the poem we needed right now. This is just the poem for this moment." And at first I felt surprised by that, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought we do need more of that sort of nuanced feeling, with the poem that goes back and forth between, humor, and what's poignant and what's serious and what's scary about what's happening in this moment. So, do you want me to read it?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and read it?
Okay. Insomnia Chronicles 26. The night is full of insomniacs Googling insomnia. Some of my friends are trying dry January, dryuary. Others are sober curious. There's a mock cocktail called a phony Negroni. It's made with non-alcoholic gin. Phony Negroni. Phony baloney. When I was 8, my brother and I were walking by a house in our neighborhood when suddenly a slab of bologna sailed through the air and stuck to a chain link fence. There were no people or animals in sight. Such a funny word, baloney. What's Biden's favorite saying? Malarkey. So hokey. But then even the word hokey is hokey. Monday, we'll inaugurate a felon the same day we celebrate Martin Luther King. Felonious Trump. For years, we'd pass the brick rancher and say, "There's the baloney house," the way you might observe that it's raining or snowing. We humans can normalize anything.
Yeah, and that was Insomnia Chronicles 26 by Erin Murphy. And that baloney, that's such a weird story. Do you have any idea? I mean, that it strikes me that maybe that could be a children's book. You could write a whole
Right?
a whole book about that. Yeah, I mean, it just appeared, huh?
Random flying meat. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that poem. It was that last line I wanted to ask about because that last line is really what sells the poem. It would be like a funny anecdote, and you have a lot of clever things, and the felonious Trump is hilarious. But then that we humans can normalize anything, which is really such a profound statement. I love those blunt, profound statements. Did you know you were going toward that, or did that just come out at the
I
end?
think at a certain point when it started to feel like a poem and like you say, not just some amusing anecdote is when I saw that connection,
Hmm.
because I didn't set out to write an inauguration poem. The poem kind of discovered that and discovered what it wanted to be. And when I started realizing that connection about, this wacky thing that we had normalized, my brother and I were walking home from swimming lessons and this like, piece of meat just flew at us.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, but thank you. Thank you for recognizing that and for including the poem this week. And I'm really excited to hear Denise.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And it's always a pleasure having you on. Thanks for coming,
Yes.
Erin.
Thanks again. All
Yep.
right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Yep. Bye. Yeah, once again, that was Erin Murphy with Insomnia Chronicles 26, today's poem of the day on rattle.com. Of course, if you don't sign up for the poem of the day by email, all you got to do is go to rattle.com, look up for that email link, and get the poem of the day in your inbox every day. We have 20,000 people get that. I get a lot of replies in the mail talking about what you feel about the poems, which is great feedback for me too. So make sure you sign up for that daily poem on rattle.com. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, as Denise Duhamel, like I said. So sit tight and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Denise Duhamel. Denise was one of our 2024 Rattle Chapbook Prize winners with her book In which was published along with this winter's issue. Her most recent full-length book of poetry was Pink Lady, which just came out, believe it or not, from Pitt Press this week. So we have another book hot off the press to share. Her other books are Second Story and Scald. Blowout was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award. A distinguished university professor in the MFA program at Florida International University in Miami. She lives in Hollywood, Florida. And here she is, Denise Duhamel. Hey, Denise, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to have you back. You're always such a fun guest. You've been on before, like I said, Rattlecast 86, so it's been a bit, but we're really happy to have you, and happy to have this chapbook. Which every year when I'm like asking for chapbook prize submissions, I ask for chapbooks with like a little more fun and humor in them, and they're pretty rare. And this one was just so fun as we were reading it, all the different lives and the ways that they play through. So it was really wonderful to pick and get to share it with the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love it. I mean, I'm so happy that it came out with Rattle. It's beautiful. And you did such a good job too, production wise. It's really pretty.
Oh, well, thanks so much. So do you want to start out with one of the poems from the book?
Yes. I thought I would start out. So all the poems in the book sort of imagine alternate lives, right? Lives that I did not get to live. And this one is called Poem in Which I Married Young and Stayed in My Hometown. I never became a poet because, well, who has the time? It was a kiddish, indulgent dream. I know that now. Each morning, I read the Academy of American Poets poem a day in my inbox, and honestly, I only understand about a third of them. I hate pretense and obscure mythology almost as much as I hated being married. I was a restless bride and soon started catting around. My husband divorced me when other wives called me the town slut, but in their whispers I heard a tinge of envy. I let my husband have the kids. I know, what kind of a mother does that? A mother who thought she wanted to be a poet. A mother who thought she had big pronouncements to make. My journals were full of scribbles about life and my longings. I even had a few verses published and learned the hard way poets don't make any money. So I went to school for cosmetology and opened my very own beauty parlor called Her Kind, named after the Anne Sexton poem. I poured my ambition into gel manicures, eyebrow threading, waxing, and highlights. What, you might ask, were the highlights of my life? Transforming brides and their wedding parties on early mornings, right in their homes, my assistant with mimosas and the spray tan machine. Most townspeople have forgotten or forgiven my own transgressions. I can make the ugliest woman feel beautiful, move her to tears, the way a poem sometimes still moves me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And that was a poem in which I married young and stayed in my hometown. And that's from the book In Which, of course. And if you don't have the copy of that book, all you have to do is subscribe to Rattle. Anybody who subscribes to me now on March 1st automatically gets that copy with their first issue. So, do that if you haven't subscribed yet, although, everybody does. Who doesn't subscribe to Rattle? But so Denise, how did that whole series come to be? It's a series of poems that have that same style of imagining alternate lives. What was the impetus for that, and how long did it take you to realize you had a project going?
That's yeah. So I think what happened was, that's a really good question. And I looked back actually today because I wasn't exactly sure when I started writing them. And I know it was like kind of a while back, but I'm going to read later from Pink Lady, my new book that came out from Pitt. And all those are elegies for my mother, who died in 2021 during the COVID pandemic. And it was quite, it was very personal work, very, difficult subject matter, right? So I think during that time and right after, when I started, I had written so much about myself. I was like, I think I'm over it. I don't think I can go there anymore. Like, what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I did this? And then it just became, a way, I don't know, just a way to just get out of myself, because I do write a lot about myself, and, enough was enough. I just had to cut it off and go cold turkey. And that's how the book came about.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting, because it's a book, not about yourself, like specifically, but then so much of yourself kind of comes through in it too. So it's like you almost can't get away from that, being personal and authentic in that way.
Right. No, that is true, that you find yourself, even when you're not yourself, you're in a persona, you still like let things sneak through about yourself. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear another poem from the book.
Okay, this one is called Poem in Which I Am a Cartoon Character. I am a bright pink blob with long eyelashes, but no genitalia. When a part of me falls off, I'm whole by the next scene. My squeaky voice annoys parents, but toddlers get a kick out of me. My name is Denise Peace, and in every episode, I try to mend broken friendships by asking feuding cartoon characters to see both sides. I mediate between a dog and cat who in the end see eye to eye. I get purple parents to accept their yellow child. I help the do-gooders convince corporate polluters to go green. I mamby-pamby to the max. The little ones love my fuchsia cheeriness, but get bored with me by first grade. Some kids even regret liking me in the first place and pull the threads off the plush doll made in my likeness. They retire their Denise Peace merchandise, sippy cups and picture books, a mainstay of yard sales. Making peace is stupid for sissies, they say, or it works in cartoons, but not in real life. Middle schoolers despise me, deny they ever watched my show. They call me fat and wonder why I have no tits, why I'm always naked, and how, for fuck's sake, I could be so naive.
Yeah, and that was another poem in which I am a cartoon character, from In Which by Denise Duhamel. So So what was it like? How did you come up with these? I know one of the poems that I don't think we're reading today is, my nephew, I think it is, asks me for advice or helps me come up with more in which. Were you just brainstorming about, and did you have like a list of all the things you could do? And then that's how I imagined it. I imagined you like having this big notebook full of possible in which poems once you realized you had a series going, and then
Yes,
you were
it
like
was.
picking them off.
It was like that. Like some never got written, like poems in which I'm a politician, or like those kind of never got written or haven't been written yet. But I think I did do that a lot, to just try to get out. And it's almost like that movie Sliding Glass Doors. Did you ever I think that's what it's called, where like a woman like goes through a sliding glass door and it's like a whole other life, and it's just that kind of, maybe I'm at the age too when I think like, oh my God, what if I had like children? What if I did marry young? What if I did, it's kind of started that way, but then it got more and more absurd, like a cartoon character.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing that comes through so strongly in this book is how much you enjoy, I think, the process of writing. That's what makes it such a joy to read, is that you seem like you're really having fun with these. Did you ever have one on your list that you were trying to write and then you had trouble finding a way to have fun with it?
No, I either just didn't do it. I mean, that's the other thing, that this project was so fun that if it wasn't fun, I just didn't bother. I just went on and, because it's kind of endless. It's almost like that, the poem, which I considered reading, but it's so long. There is a poem in which my grandnephew, he's fantastic, he's 10, or he was 10 at the time, and he said, "What are you working on?" Which was such a mature question, I thought. And then I tried to explain, I'm working on these poems that, in which I other lives. And he just started going, "What if you were made out of Legos? What if you were a dog?" Blah, blah, blah. And he was like so much better at it than I was. I was just writing everything down. But you realize like the creativity of like young people. And I think is that a poet's job is always try to get back there and see the world like with kids' eyes,
Mm-hmm.
which is hard when you've lived a long time and you've seen a lot. But there's also this kind of way to just kind of move, just change your perspective a little bit, and the world changes
Mm-hmm.
and becomes something else.
Yeah, would you say that you were able to do that while you're writing poems more than in regular life, or do you think you sort of have cultivated a sense of wonder throughout your day too? Is it the poems that allow you to do that, or is it just the way you are?
I think it's probably the poems, because I think sometimes in my quote unquote real life, like day to day, I mean, I do try to be joyful and try to, make the best of everything. But I think there's like this drudgery in the day to day. Even when you try to have the best attitude about it, you still have to do your taxes. You still have to like get the oil change. Like you still have to do these kind of mundane, irritating things. And so I think that it's probably reserved for the poetry. That's where I get the most excited.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
I
that's
wish I could. I wish I
mhm.
could carry it over more than I do.
Yeah, well, I always think about the haiku poets, because having that, writing a haiku every day or multiple haiku and always being on the lookout for haiku, how much that must completely change the way that you approach life, because you're walking through thinking like, what could I turn into a haiku? Which just gives you such a sense of sort of appreciation and wonder for the world by walking through the world just in that mode a lot. And as a poet who's so prolific, it seems like you have that mode so often too. Like you're always on the hunt, it seems, for new things that you can turn into poetry. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's really interesting for I think a lot of poets do that. We mine our own lives, like almost anything that happens to you. I mean, I just remember I studied with Thomas Lux, who's now deceased, but I remember he said that he was having a argument with his wife, and they were like, and I was so young when he said this, I couldn't even kind of imagine being married. But then he said, and I just said, keep going. This is all going in the poem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like almost anything, like what, even the worst things that are happening to you, you can sort of order into something. I mean, I guess it's just a sensibility, right? Like a way
Mm-hmm.
to sort of make sense of the awful and the wonder, and also seeing really beautiful things amidst the horror, and I think that's like a lot of, I know this is taped on a very sad night for a lot of poets. And, I think just keeping that joy and wonder and looking at things slant. I think that's why I liked Erin's poem so much. It's just, we've got to keep that. We can't be crushed by it. Our imaginations, like we still have our imaginations at least, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's so fascinating about this book because it's imagining other lives in which you don't have poetry, basically, and how what would be different, and it feels like reading this book. I mean, it just reminds you how wonderful it is to be able to be a poet, and to have that sense of wonder when you look at things and imagine, that connection with your life and having, so did you come across any of the sort of characters you invented that were alternate selves that you kind of wished that it was yourself, that you had a longing, or would you always, of the 1,000 lives, would you always pick this one?
I would always pick this one.
Yeah.
Honestly, which is when I set out to write this book, it was because my life was, I was really sad, painful, depressed. I just lost my mother through, anyway, it was bad. And then I was like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm out of here. And I'm doing all these other, I'm going to invent all these other crazy lives. But I still, in retrospect, I'm really glad things went the way they went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well,
And
let's hear.
I don't know if everybody can say that, but I think a lot of writers can
Mm-hmm.
because they made something, like they made something.
Yeah, and made a thing that will last, a sort of a footprint in the world too. I mean, even there's the day-to-day things that we get out of writing, and then we get to have something that outlives us too, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I lost my friend Maureen Seaton, and I know that you were kind enough to publish our collaborations. And sometimes when I just read her books and she's gone, but she's still there. I remember her writing this, or I read a poem of hers from before I knew her, and she's there. And it's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's hear another poem from the book, Denise.
Okay. This one is a little not as long as some of the other ones, but this one is just to warn you, this is the longest one I'll read. But it's poem in which I have read the terms and conditions. Poem in which I have read the terms and conditions. I've checked the box acknowledging that whatever happens, it won't be your fault, that my insurance policy will cover everything except what actually breaks, that you are not responsible for any data corruption, any mistakes in my blood work results, that your mammogram can only detect so much. I know you are not responsible for the brakes in my car, the asbestos that might have crawled into my lungs, whatever germs your germ killer can't kill, the long O's of my moaning if I get sick. You can't possibly be responsible for the contents in an envelope you send my way, any viruses or spyware that may injure me. I understand there may be disruptions and I shouldn't complain. I understand there may be shipping delays, stolen packages from my porch, and that's, of course, not your fault. And you can't be held liable for damage, direct or indirect, consequential or incidental. What you sell me comes as is, and I will deal with that. I understand wars or acts of God have nothing to do with you, and there is no such thing as perfect, and you never claim to be. Of course, you reserve the right to cancel my order due to product availability. I understand you cannot and do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any product images or descriptions of services. I understand prices may go up. You need to make a buck. I understand that you are not responsible for typos or admissions, that heck, you can terminate this agreement at any time without notice. I understand that your help desk is not required to help me, and that your chat button doesn't necessarily mean someone is there to talk. I understand you may use cookies and pop-up ads. That's all fine and dandy with me. I have waived my rights to sue should you cause me inconvenience or harm. It only makes sense that you can't be blamed for the shenanigans of any third-party vendors. I get it. You can sell my information to anyone you want, and I won't get a cut. Needless to say, you are taking reasonable steps to protect my identifying info, but shit happens, and hey, what are you going to do? I, in turn, will do nothing, as I have no recourse. I understand I am consulting you at my own risk, and I alone am responsible for keeping myself safe. I agree that my password has an exclamation mark and a jumble of letters that will be hard for me to remember. I agree to refrain from any abusive, pornographic, and obscene behavior, and that you will determine what those behaviors might be. Should I have a lack of enjoyment, that cannot possibly be your fault. Enjoyment is subjective, after all. I respect that your brand is your brand, and I will never try to copy it. I agree that I will never scan, probe, or test your vulnerability. I will not deep link, page scrape, robot, or spider you. I also attest that I myself am not a bot. I see the traffic lights in the squares you post, and I am checking those boxes too. Naturally, you have the right to use my poems and my likeness in your promotions. You have a right to take from me whatever you want. I agree to all these terms and conditions. I know this constitutes a legally binding agreement. Furthermore, I understand you may post supplemental terms and conditions at any time and for any damn reason.
Yeah, that's such a great poem. That was from In Which. That was poem in which I have read the terms and conditions. There's a bunch of questions already, and people are talking about how entertaining and funny these poems are. Let me find it. Maro Dowdle says, "Oh, where'd it go? Hang on, scroll up. Okay, wait." Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. How do you cultivate humor in your work? Is it deliberate practice or does it come about spontaneously? And that's something I always wonder about too, because I always want to get more humor into my work, especially because at poetry readings, you have a lot of serious poems, and it's so great to break one up with something that's funny. You want to have a mix of things. And how did you cultivate that? Was it a conscious decision?
Well, I think it was almost sort of accidental. Like I remember reading something so probably melodramatic that I was really serious about at an open mic a long, long time ago, and people laughing. I was like, oh, that is kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like I think like over the top seriousness can be sort of funny. And I went to Emerson College as an undergrad a long time ago, and Dennis Leary was there as a teacher, believe it or not. He's just like maybe 2 years older than I am, but he was like hired as an adjunct like right away to teach mass comm. And I remember seeing him in comedy clubs and just I don't know, just like learning so much about comic timing that I learned it like osmosis, I guess. I didn't like really understand it, but was thinking about how comedy, like the line breaks are kind of like the pauses you would take. The callback is kind of like just called closure in a poem, and I almost always, and I tell my students all the time, like, if you can't figure out how to end a poem, go back to the first line or the first few lines and see what's there and just try, like you would in a stand-up comedy routine. But I think it's maybe just a sensibility because I've tried to teach it, and it's like the worst thing to teach because you can say, okay, make a reversal, like write, someone's going to say something, then you'd write what they were going to say, but now say the opposite. Like there are like little techniques, but I think, I don't know. I don't know. It's like almost a sensibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes really serious and I don't think I don't think comedy is here and seriousness is here or vice versa. Like I think it's just like people's voice. But I know sometimes when I hear like really serious poets at a reading, I'm so I'll just go to the dark side with them or the sadness or the seriousness of it. And I know even they will feel like halfway through, they'll just have to like undercut their poem with like a joke in the middle, like, hey, sorry, I'm not funny. Or, like it's like almost, I think it is performance oriented where you feel like you have to entertain. And when you say something funny and you hear someone laugh, you're like, got him. But if you say something super sad, you don't know if people are, like you look out to see if anyone's crying. I mean, that would be like weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I feel like I wish I had a better answer, but I do try to cultivate it. But then again, like I write really, I write really sad poems too. So
Yeah. Well, that's something that I think about a lot because I haven't really figured it out yet. There's some relationship. Yeah, there's a great essay by Kay Ryan, and where she calls it, I think, the ah and the aha. But she
yeah,
talks about the
yeah.
relationship between those two things and how somehow, like in a poetry reading, you read something, maybe a sad poem, and then at the end, people go like, ah, there's like that
Oh,
exhalation of breath, that you're waiting for.
yeah.
But how similar that is to laughter, because it's this like communal, spontaneous bodily reaction to the words. And somehow
Mm,
that has so much in common with poetry. I mean, like it's almost like they're actually the same thing and they're just sort of manifesting in different angles of emotion, maybe, but it's still creating a physiological reaction in somebody. I mean, that feeling of the top of your head taken off, that, is the same thing. And it's that like forcing just through words and language, like an actual physiological response in people. And there's something communal about it too, and that's why it's so great to do poetry readings, because you have that bodily group reaction too. The same way, a comedy club is so much more funny
yeah.
than like watching it on Netflix. And so
Totally.
there's something to that. What do you think it is? Do you have any thoughts on the ah
It's
and the
like that.
aha and how they connect?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of like that mask. Remember that, mask of like the comedy and tragedy mask?
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like it is the same thing because it's almost I knew all these because I was teaching a class. I had like all these like little things, but one was comedy. Wait, comedy is when you're walking down the street and fall in a hole. Tragedy is when I have a hangnail. You know what I mean? Like it's like this kind of like you can make anything about yourself. It could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, yeah, like why do we laugh when people fall? It's terrible. I mean, and it's because it's unexpected, boing.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, even though it's obviously not funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Maybe
found
that's the heart of it.
it
Maybe.
funny, but like when you see it, you laugh. I mean, I think I even laughed when I
Mm-hmm.
fell before I
Yeah.
realized agony. You're just like,
Yeah.
what the hell? That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the key, is that unexpectedness to it. Now that you mention that, it's always like I didn't see this coming. Like there's a setup in the punchline, and a poem kind of has that too. I think one of the, there's somebody who talk about the style of poems, and there's one poem that's like the rope-a-dope poem, like the float like a butterfly, sting like a bee thing, where you're like going on, you don't really know what's
Yeah.
going on, and then bam, like the punchline, like a joke would hits you, and it's some kind of
Hmm.
like completely undercutting all it was saying before. And
Hmm.
that float like a butterfly, sting like a bee type poem, and it's that undercutting of expectation that then we spontaneously react to, I guess maybe in a way that our conscious mind wasn't expecting, like our subconscious feels it and connects before we can even catch up to making sense of it, and maybe that's why we have that reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It would happen whether it's like something like I mean in Erin's poem, right? We're kind of like the baloney story is hilarious, da, 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 da. And then even Polonius Trump, that's like kind of funny wordplay. And then that last line just kind of gets you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like some poems really do straddle both.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk about voice too, because you have such a distinctive voice, and it is like, I don't know. There's this sort of like commercial aspect to it, and then using that to its own advantage. Like the last one we read was about terms and conditions, and it's the irony of having a whole lot of like human authenticity within that sort of frame of register, I guess, that
Mhm.
makes the poem work so well. That contrast between the two. And your poems always have, there's a very distinctive, maybe one of the most distinctive voices in poetry, I think, is your voice. Like I think I could read one of your poems without the name on it and know immediately like it's either you or someone trying to be like you. And so how did you develop that voice? I mean, was it something that you like, when did you find it? Because we talk about finding our voice, but you clearly found it and used it and have it. So when did you know that you had a voice where you knew what you were doing with it, I guess?
It wasn't until, I mean, after grad school for sure, because I look back in grad school, I was just trying to write. I was trying to imitate everybody. I was still learning, like, okay, I'm going to try to write like this person. I'm going to try like this person. I, I, I remember just like it was so hard for me to be clear. Like, I would just like eight metaphors, like eight mixed metaphors and like a stupid image at the end. I mean, it was so bad sometimes. And then one day, just like I think I remember the poem, and it's called Fear on 11th Street and Avenue A. And I just finished graduate school, and I was like, I can't do that. I can't write like other people anymore. And I just saw this little girl, like, and in a schoolyard, and I just started writing about it. And then I thought, I'm going to trust my leaps. I'm just going to make, the connections. And then I think that was just the beginning of me, like, okay, I'm just going to sound like me. But it took a long time. I think I tried to be everybody else first. And maybe I learned, at least that, I mean, even though those poems weren't very good, I learned how to do stuff by imitation, I think. And then finally, I just kind of, I think also I grew up not knowing you could write about like Boy George or, you know what I mean? The culture, like things I was interested in were here, like movies I went to or whatever, or even comedy clubs or going to see Sandra Bernhardt when I was like 20 something. And then just, or Barbie dolls or whatever it was. And then like thinking, oh, I can only be the haiku poet, right? Or write about nature or write about existential things. And then when I put them together is where I found the voice. But it took a while. I think, poets sometimes, like there's some people who just come fully formed, but I think sometimes you just have to like try a lot of stuff and then just break out.
Yeah, yeah. That commercial, I mean, not commercial, the pop culture references that you have in your poems too. Was that something that you had to sort of give yourself permission to do? Like once you realized that you mentioned that you could, you realized that you could. Is that something that you struggled with at all? Like, oh, will this poem last because of the references here? And should I do it? And is that something that you had to allow yourself to do and work at allowing yourself, or did you just go for it?
I just went for, I mean, yeah, at first I remember thinking like, oh, I'll write about Barbie dolls or I'll write about this. I do have poems about like obscure movies that no one's ever seen but me. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you pick the wrong thing or the thing that doesn't last, but I think that's what footnotes are for. And now, I mean, I used to think like, okay, this poem's going to be completely obsolete because no one's going to know who Gary Hart is or whatever. As you grow older, your references become, farther in the past. But a quick Google search now, it's almost like you can write about anything. Like the stuff that I used to really worry about, I'm not so worried about anymore because people just, it's not onerous to look it up. It used to be onerous to like go to the library and like find out, I mean, it was like, am I going to do it? And now it's everything's there pretty much.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point. Yeah, and especially with AI and Chat GPT in your pocket too, moving forward, there's like the days of wondering what something means are going to be over pretty soon too. You just
yeah,
you know,
I don't know. It's a little bit scary, but yeah.
Well, let's hear another poem. Let's do Let's do another poem from the book. I think this will be the last one. Then we'll move on to the next book.
Okay, all right. This is I think this is the first poem in which. And this is called Self-Portrait in Which I Am Not Polite. I'm not wearing lipstick. Hell, I haven't even brushed my teeth. My nails are unpolished, ragged, dangerous if you try to take my hand. I don't know how else to say it. I just don't care. There's sleep in my eyes, the gooey kind, dandruff on my scalp. I have given up on deodorant and soap. Say hello at your own peril. Sneer and I will whack you. Possibly throw an old stiletto, so duck. I cut the line, honk my horn, chew with a full mouth, then burp. The piercings in my earlobes have closed. My heart has closed. And my clothes, I've stopped doing laundry. I've stopped the tedium of hand washing my delicates. I've given up on bras, they hurt. I've given up on doing dishes, smiling, shaving, or crossing my legs. I've given up on purses, bangles on my wrist, any expectations of femininity. No, you cannot sit here. No, I don't have a minute. I've given up on the color pink and mirrors. I leave splats on the floor and dust on the shelf. I've never felt more like myself.
Yeah, that's the first poem from Self-Portrait in Which I'm Not Polite. It struck me too, reading that poem, it also could serve as the last poem, like talking about callbacks too,
Yes.
Yeah, and it's fascinating in the way that works. Do you think, having done this project, is there something a sort of a general thing that you learned in the process of doing this? Is there something that you like didn't realize about yourself, or from writing these poems that you came to discover?
Well, I was talking, I put like that little statement about, writing about the book, and I'd read that really great essay by Emily Carr, and she talks about writing about the unflattering side of yourself, or the part that you don't want to show to the world, which I've been pretty, I have to say I've been pretty good about that. But her quote was like, I think it was something like write a poem in which you're not polite. And I'm like, oh, okay. Or, and you can let out rage in a different way. I mean, you can just like that alternate self where you're just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care at all. I mean, of course I do care, but like is a little Denise living in me that wishes I could just never pass a vacuum again, but I won't let myself do it. So it's like, it's just, I think I learned a lot about disclosing, like, even though these are all like alternate personas or masks or whatever, there is like, it's okay to mind the not so great part, or the uglier parts, or the shameful parts, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, like doing it with humor really helped. In a way too, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good question because, like as I said in the beginning, like I was trying to escape writing about, my mother's death, but it was, it kind of comes like there is a poem about my mother's death in there, like it just stuff comes back anyway in different ways. And I remember the other thing, and it didn't make a poem, but I had written in my notebook, Caring Sharon Olds once, talking about, she wrote a lot about, she writes a lot about like terrible things that have happened to her, which I think a lot of poets do. Like, it's like, poor us. And, but it was something about like, she was talking about two hands, and she goes, but I never talked about like this hand, like slapping someone, or, like our worst moments. Like they don't often make poems.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Or embarrassing, or not really like, oh, that wasn't me, that was just, but it was us in a way.
Yeah, definitely. So once you had this manuscript that you submitted to the Rattle Chapbook Prize complete, how many other In Which poems did you have, and did you know that was like the end of it, or are there more poems than you're wondering what to do with? Are you going to expand it? What's the status of In Which poems?
I have on my computer, I have like In Which full length book, but I don't know. Like, I mean, geez, I don't know. I mean, I felt like the chapbook was the perfect vehicle for it because I didn't know at some point if it just would get too much, but I do have more. So I don't know what to do. Like In Which two, or like the sequel, or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Well, maybe people can write to you and ask to see some extra.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the other new book. Pink Lady just came out from Pitt, which is my favorite press. It's great that you published there. I do. I love all their books all the time. And I'll put the cover of Pink Lady up on the screen. It just came out this week. And that's a wonderful photo of your mother on the cover, who is the Pink Lady. So you mentioned, we talked about it a little bit already, but about your mother's death. So what can you say, introduce the book, how this book came to be with her, and her experience and your experience through COVID and the end of her life.
Right. So my mom, I think it was December 2019, she kept falling, and she had really bad arthritis and like mobility stuff. So she fell, there was one fall that was so bad that she wound up in rehab, and from rehab she didn't get well enough to go home. So we're talking like December. I remember being with her at Christmas in like December 2020, and then there's no way to go home, you have to go in a nursing home. And she went into a nursing home, the same nursing home where she worked as a young nurse, which is like a whole other fascinating, like a full circle thing, which is not a great full circle, but it's just like a pattern where she wound up there. And I said, don't worry, I live in Florida, she lives in Rhode Island, I grew up in Rhode Island, she was still there. I said, don't worry, I'll be there every 3 weeks, every month. Well, I will be there, I'll come visit you all the time. And I did. And then but only like 3 times. And then COVID hit, right? So I couldn't go. I broke my promise. My sister who lives close by couldn't go. Her grandchild, it was her granddaughters and great grandchildren. I mean, no one could go see her. And she never really got, uh, she had her faculties the whole time. So I remember talking to her on the phone in March, like, Mama, don't worry. It's going to be like 6 weeks. They're going to flatten the curve. And she's like, they're not going to. She was really smart. She was like one of those nurses from the 50s, right? So she was as smart as a doctor and would have been a doctor, except of, her gender and being born at that time. So she's like, you can't flatten the curve if there's how many cases? 200. That means there's really like 10,000, da, da, da. Like she just knew. And then she was just stuck there. And all, people were dying around her, and, it was just, and it was awful. It was really awful. So, but then I got to see her at her death because it was the Omicron virus by then, and they were letting in like end of life visitors. So I got to be with her, which was great. But, it was just so awful. It's just, and it's like my pain times like a million or more than a million people died. So, it's just, it's just a horrible.
Yeah, that's just such a hard thing. How long? My COVID like timeline history is like faulty now. Was it 2 years? Almost like a year, almost 2 years before the Omicron, or was it that?
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
started in March. I know just because of like my mom, but I think we shut down in March, like March 13th,
Yeah,
2020. And like I remember in May 2021,
There's
they
a
were
vaccine,
starting to let visitors in if you met outside with a mask. And then that shut down because of Omicron. And then, I think so in July, she died in July of 2021, and there were still restrictions, so.
Yeah, and that's just such a long time, for the end of life to have no contact. I mean,
Yeah.
what was it like for her in the nursing home? Was she allowed to interact with other people, or was they keep all the patients isolated too?
It was horrible. No, because so in this nursing home, which was a pretty, nursing homes aren't great, but this one was like pretty good for a nursing home. It was a Catholic nursing home, and, like a lot of compassion and visitors and all that, and like activities. And so December, January, February, there was like barn babies where you could go pet animals. There was like card games, sing along, and my mom was like, "That's really dumb." But then she finally started going and liking it and meeting other patients and stuff. And then once COVID hit, all that stopped, and she had to stay in her room. She couldn't even walk in the hall. You know what I mean? So it was like It was like being in prison almost.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I was thinking, because there's some poems that mention that, and I was like, did I misunderstand that? Am I like, she really couldn't leave even her room for that long? It's just such a, gosh,
right.
I mean, and after such a
Remember,
long,
this was like before the vaccine or anything, right? And then, I mean, it was like we would get updates from the nursing home, and it'd be like 6 people have perished, 12 people, like a few weeks later, 12. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then, it was awful. Yeah, it was really awful.
Yeah. Well, why don't we hear?
All right.
Yeah, why don't we hear a poem from the book? Yeah.
Okay. So this one is called Wackadoodle, and it's very strange reading it the night before the second inauguration of who, but here we go. Wackadoodle. My mother was a fan of the word, often peppering her sentences with it. She visited me in Florida the day after Trump won in 2016. When I'd sent her a ticket, I thought we'd both be celebrating the first woman president. When I picked her up at the Fort Lauderdale airport, nothing looked different. I was baffled, sure that the planes of the world would stop flying, their wings too heavy with grief. I know, of course, planes don't have feelings, and I was projecting onto those silver beasts. My mother and I tried to talk about other things, but we kept coming back to America's withering future. Once in a while, my mother would say, "We just have to give him a chance, I guess." And I would nod, though deep inside, I knew Trump was a flim-flam sham, that things would get worse. We didn't know yet that this would be my mother's last visit. We didn't know she would wind up in a nursing home ravaged by COVID-19. We didn't know the US would be ravaged by an insurrection. She was ravishing that November, and men kept trying to talk to her. No hint of death anywhere in her torso. One old dude wearing a Scarlet's strip club cap cornered her while I was in a restaurant bathroom. All flirting is ruined, my mother said. All I can think of is that wackadoodle grabbing women by the you-know-what.
Yeah, so great last line there. There was Wackadoodle by Denise Duhamel from Pink Lady, her new book from Pitt Press. And so that book, I mean, you have all the pop culture that we talked about already, and this book, it becomes a chronicle of the time so much. You record the Trump era in a lot of poems, and the COVID in a lot of poems, and this time, there was an era of submissions. It's always like interesting to see what submissions were coming in, and there was sort of around, I don't know, 2010, 2012. There started to be a wave of poems about people, having their parents into a nursing home, because I think just where the baby boom came, and how old our readers are and stuff, it became a thing that people were doing at that time. And then this becomes a poem about the very end of life at a nursing home too. And so so this book is a chronicle of all those three things at once. How much are you aware, are thinking about that, about how like this is a record that I'm making of this time in history, and how these multiple things were converging in one moment in time?
Like, completely aware. And in fact, one of the poems, but I felt like too long to read tonight, but Monkey Mind, well, two of the poems and also Another Summer of Love were in Rattle.
Mm-hmm.
And Monkey Mind was written right as, it was like remember the first time around when Trump, or second time around when Trump lost to Biden, and there were those days of counting the Electoral College, and you'd like going back and forth, and it was called Monkey Mind. And I remember that being like, oh my God, he can't win. My mom is already in the nursing home. She's never going to survive. Da, 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 da. So it's like, when I put the book together, of course, I never dreamt that it would come out the week before he was inaugurated. I'm still like in shock, really, because I thought, if 1 million people died, aren't their relatives going to be like, no, you killed my cousin, my brother, but yeah, so it's so baffling to me. But I really did want to make a record of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of hyper aware of that. Like even the TV shows that were on, like The Blacklist, like there were shows that went off TV because of COVID. And yeah, I think, when I put the book together, I was really hyper aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Were you thinking about it at the time, or is this just, you're Denise Duhamel, so you write, so this is what you were writing about, was that it?
I guess also, like, I wrote through it. Like, I didn't know what the ending was going to be. Like, I still had this fantasy that my mom would live, COVID would be over, I would go sweep her away, get her out of that nursing home. But, I had this like rescue fantasy that obviously didn't happen, but I really, I didn't know. So the poems were written pretty much, well, that was written after, obviously, but looking back, but a lot of the poems in the middle section were written as they were, as my mom was talking to me on the phone about what was happening in the nursing home. So, and as I was sheltering in place, or,
Yeah. Well, let's hear the next poem that you wanted to share.
Okay. So this is called Snow Globe. And as I said, my mom was working at this nursing home when she was a much younger woman. So I think she was like kind of trying to help all the time in her capacity as a nurse. Snow Globe. My mother tells me the nurses dress like astronauts. Mount St. Rita must go on the assumption that any of the patients could be infected. The RNs complain that it's hot under their masks and visors, gowns, and jumpsuits. My mother suggests the nurses open the window for air, even though it's chilly, even though it's a nor'easter. All they had to do was get me a blanket. Poor things, they're working so hard. Then her room is a globe, everyone's world shaken, snowflakes and stars.
Yeah. And that was Snow Globe, again, from Pink Lady, the new book by Denise Duhamel. And so your mom, being a nurse, is such a fascinating person to be as a character, just in a book, to be going through this and having that perspective. How much? I know that some of the poems are really interesting in the way they deal with like the stories she brought home and things like that around the breakfast table after a
Yeah.
night shift. How much did you, growing up with your mom, like think about what she did as a profession? Is that something that was really central to your image of her?
Yeah, I mean, it really was because I was also a really sick kid. I had asthma as a child. So she was very good. I mean, she knew what to do because she was a nurse. And yeah, I always had this sense that, I mean, even up until even while she was in the nursing home, I'd be like, well, I have this rash, you know what I mean? Like she just knew, well, put this on it. Like so she just had this knowledge. Or like, her grandkids would get something, and she'd be like, do this, do that. And she was always right. So I had this sense of her, like being, just very competent in that way and kind of no nonsense about life and death, which is really strange because she was more, I mean, she had seen people die a lot, right? Because she was a nurse. And she was very level-headed in a way that I was like, oh, I'm a poet. Like, no, like very over dramatic and emotional. So yeah, I did have a sense for her. And I remember thinking she was really important because there was a blizzard, like a really bad blizzard in 1978. And I was a high school student and they needed nurses. And she like someone came and got her on a snowmobile and off she went. And I was like, wow, like she was kind of this heroic character in a strange way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no, just like save the day sort of person. So yeah, yeah, I can see how she'd be a really interesting, I mean, she was an interesting character.
Yeah, that snowmobile story is great. Given all that and her understanding of what was going on from a medical perspective and her sense of mortality, I was wondering, if she agreed with all the restrictions and protocols, or did she would she have wished that she could take her chances and just see you? Like it seems like if you have a few years left anyway, that you would want them to be full, even if it was a risk. Did she talk about that?
She did talk about that because she was like, okay, she had this arthritis and like, so for her, just like being able to walk down the hall in her walker was like her exercise and it helped her, just psychologically to get out of this like tiny room. Right. And yeah, she did talk about that a lot. And, why can't, if I just wear a mask and, give me one of those visors, I'll do it, and she did feel like that. And she's like, come see me. I don't care if you give me COVID. I just want to see you. Like she just really, yeah, she did have that sense of that. But she was also super responsible and she didn't want to spread it. And, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just such a difficult situation that so many people went through, in that era,
Well, that's what's so interesting because the book just really came out last week and so many people are like, oh my God, that happened to, even my students are like, oh, that happened to my Nana. We lost my Nana. Like I just thought it was like my age and older, but like so many little kids too lost people. And yeah, it's unthinkable.
Yeah. Well, I do think it is going to be one of those books that a lot of readers really, went through that experience and it resonates with them to read because it's such a common thing, but it's not something that, we write about very often. So, it seems like an important book in that way.
Thanks. Yeah, I know it felt like in a way like there's okay, it was a lot. I was thinking of like my model was even though it's very different, but like Sharon Olds wrote that book, The Father, and it's like going to see him every day. And and I was like, I kind of felt like I gotta do it. Like I felt like it was like almost docu-poetry or something, like documenting something.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got 2 poems left to read. Before we do that, I should say, if anybody has any questions for Denise, please do pass them along in the chat windows, either on Facebook or YouTube. I'm keeping an eye on both of those. It helps if you put question in bold so I can see it. If you have any questions, and I should say also at this point, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, please do. There's twice as many people watching as there always are that have clicked like so far. And the more likes we get, the more people get to watch and experience poetry, because that's how algorithms work. The likes show it to more people, and the more likes per viewer we have, the better. So click like if you haven't yet. So Denise, what do you want to read next?
I thought I would read, so this is called Purse, and it's a really short poem, and it's based on the Gertrude Stein poem, or I don't know if it's a poem. In Tender Buttons, she has something called a piece of writing called Purse. And Gertrude Stein wrote, "A purse was not green, it was not straw color, it was hardly seen, and it had a long use, and the chain was never missing. It was not misplaced, it showed that it was open. That is all that it showed." So I read that as my mother was dying, and I wrote this poem called Purse. When my mother passed, I emptied her white purse, tissue pack and reading glasses, coupons and address book. I once lived in the purse inside her, my first pink home, the knotted strap, an umbilical cord. When I grew up, I took care of my own purse, its pristine lining, never stretched or stuffed with a fetus. I waxed the buckles, polished the pink clit, the tender button that opened and closed my clutch. I carried pleasure inside me, my lips keeping so many secrets. I tipped my mother's empty purse upside down, its vulnerable silk insides torn.
Yeah, and that was Purse from Pink Lady by Denise Duhamel, the new book that just came out. Thinking, as you were writing even, that this was kind of docu-poetry, did that change the way at all that you approached poems? Like knowing that you were sort of chronicling both your personal experience and your mother's, but then for a larger audience and capturing the time, did that alter the way you approached the poems in any way?
It did, like in one version, but my friend Stephanie Strickland, who's like fantastic, and she always helps me put like with the books, and it was like June 8th. June 9th, 3 p.m. And she's like, no, you got to stop, because like I actually had like times, dates, and I was really trying to almost like a diary. And she's like, it's just too, like, no, it's just too much for my head. And then sometimes I didn't put them in the right order because I was like, oh, but this is important. And she's like, this has got to go. And so I think I was hyper aware of it. Yeah, of it being like a diary, or I mean, it's not a diary or anything like that, but like having this sense of like it's chronological for the most part, especially the middle section. Like it's like, here's my mother as a kid, here's my mother dying. It's like, here's my mother after here's me after my mother dies. It's like bang, bang, bang. Yeah. Yeah. I think I was a lot, especially putting the book together. I was really hyper aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then did you think at all about trying to make your mom more of an archetype than she was, or were you always trying to bring her as an individual to the surface? Did that make a difference?
I know. That was something I struggled a lot with, because at first she was an archetype, and then I was like, no, it's really important that she was a nurse and that she like had a like hula skirt from World War II that her brother brought back. Like, I mean, I just put on all these details. Like I used photographs a lot, like not only the one on the cover, but there's other, like the one we used on the casket, like the one, that I took that at that time where she came to visit, so it's like, yeah, I made her more like my mom than an archetype, but at the beginning she kind of was an archetype.
Yeah,
because I was thinking mother, like, and that probably the Purse poem is like probably more archetype than the rest, but I think
it's always interesting how much having that personal that personal connection makes it even more powerful in the aggregate, and that's why it's just so important to bring the person to life, because you connect with the person that's there and not in general. I think it's very tempting, and to see a lot of poems submitted, where you want to be as general as possible so everybody can relate, but you actually have so much more of a connection when you feel that individuality.
I think it's true. Like the more specific you are, the more universal it is, right? So even like someone's reading it like their mother or nana or cousin or sister or whatever wasn't a nurse, but they were a real person with all these, oh yeah, like they think of their own like specifics, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask about the political that enters in very often too. I mean, so you're chronicling the era, and that comes up so often. Did that affect the way that you were approaching poems, having that much politics coming into it? Was there a way that you like thought about whether or not you should combine the two topics, or why did you decide to go for it that way?
I think that Adrian Rich, like the political is personal, right? Or the personal is political, not political is the personal is political. So I felt like, wow, never a time. I mean, I feel like many times in my life, politics has, come in, like there's real consequences of politics, right? And rights and so on. However, this one was so in your face, or so in my face. There's no way I could ignore it because it's like Trump with the bleach on TV and the updates and it was just like, I think I can, when I think if I was just home and everyone I knew was like safe, which was impossible. But let's say I just was like 20 and all my friends were 20 and my mom was like 40 and no one had any pre-existing conditions. Maybe I would be like more removed, but every single dumb decision was impacted everybody, or impacted me and my mom and my family, big time. And I say that, it probably hasn't ever been life and death before. Because I'm lucky, I'm really lucky. The first time that was like, what? You mean he has the power to like really kill us, his own citizens,
Yeah. One of the things that's always difficult with political poems is that you end up having, your political opinion kind of, I don't know, overwhelms the poetic sensibility or something. Like there's a subtle way that poetry operates. And the political ends up being, going into rhetoric so often. And so I think you carefully avoid that in the poem. Was that something that was hard to do in this book to avoid, becoming, because, with Poets Respond every week, I see all the political rants and, it's good to know what people are thinking, but then, the poetry has to come from a deeper place, I guess. Did you have trouble accessing that deeper place because it was so politically charged?
Yeah, there are a lot of like just rants. I mean, and like you hear me talk and it's like, obviously this can't be a poem, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I like, even just, you just have to tap me and like my rage it was so awful. The rage is there, but yeah, I think, I mean, there were like journal, stuff in my journal and stuff that was clearly not ever going to be a poem, but I needed to like do it to be able to write a poem, or talk to my friends, or I had really good friends that, we would talk all the time during it. And and it's always like, that is a real concern, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Do you have any advice for trying to channel that, political rage into things that actually work as poems? Is there any like technique that you found that helps?
I love the idea. Well, like I love the idea of just writing it out, like writing the bad poem first, right? Like I am so furious. How could this happen? But whatever it is, whatever side you're on, whatever your take is, just get it out of your system and then start again. Because I think you can't deny what is in there or what the rant is. There's also like, ways, like, do you know Alipo, that N+7? So you take all, like, you could write a rant, I suppose. This actually might be I think this might be a good prompt.
We just heard, I saw in live time the next prompt. Book appear.
So. Yes. All right. Write a rant. Don't worry if it's terrible. To be as abstract and obnoxious and even full of cliches as you want. Blah, blah, blah. Then circle all the nouns and go to the dictionary and substitute all the nouns with the 7th preceding noun. And I bet it'll be good.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to see
Right?
what
Because
people try.
your reader will know what you're talking about, but it'll be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be like, I don't know if it'll be a poem, but it'll be like closer to a poem.
Yeah, yeah. How often do you employ like those kind of techniques? I mean, not that specifically, but just in general, like, oh, I'm going to take this, I'm going to write this poem this certain way. Is that something that you do often to free up your imagination?
I do that stuff like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I love wordplay. I love anything that sounds like something. That's why when I read Thelonious Trump, and I thought Thelonious Monk, I mean, it was so good. Like anything like that to me is poetry gold.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I do stuff like that a lot.
Yeah.
And I also just let myself write really bad cliche stuff just to get it out of the way and then go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's always great advice.
Yeah.
Well, we're up on time. Let's do one last poem from Pink Lady.
Okie dokie. This one's really short. And as I said, my mom had my sister, and she had 2 daughters, 2 granddaughters, and 6 great-grandsons. And this is called Inheritance. My sister gives her grandsons the Cracker Barrel gift card my mother never got to use. They buy candy, Smarties, Cowtails, now and later long-lasting chews. Then blow kisses up to their Gigi, who now lives beyond the cluttered ceiling and the gloriously retro heaven that smells like a Yankee seaside candle or maybe pancakes.
Yeah, that's great. I love that last line there. Denise, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you and get to experience poetry with you. Congratulations on this new book, Pink Lady, and of course the Rattle Chapbook Prize too. So a lot of great Denise Duhamel work that people can check out. Yeah, thanks for being here and for sharing everything with us.
Oh, thank you, Tim. It was a blast. All right.
Yeah, definitely. It always is. Take care, Denise.
You too. Thanks for everything.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, so that was Denise Duhamel. Of course, you can find In Which, the chapbook that won the Rattle Chapbook Prize, by subscribing to Rattle, or just go to rattle.com and order it there. And you can find Pink Lady wherever fine books are sold. It just came out from Pitt, so check that out too. Definitely 2 wonderful books from Denise, and hope you enjoy them. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to think of a word that transports you back to childhood and give the poem that title. So that's the prompt for this week. And if you have a poem like that, there's some rules, and there's an extra rule this week too. The Buffalo Bills are playing right now, and you will not mention or even reference the score whatsoever because we're watching the game afterward. Anybody who references the Bills game will be banned. So do not reference the Bills because we're going to have a lot of fun. I do not want spoilers. Okay, that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, email your poem to promptlines@rattle.com so we can show it on the screen when you read the poem. That's promptlines@rattle.com. Email your poem there first so I can show it. Then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to put in the chat window on YouTube or Facebook, and join us on the Zoom, but only if you want to share poems. And remember, there's a 1-page max for poetry. If you have longer poems, you're welcome to submit them for Prompt Poet of the Month. But don't share it here. We have a 1-page max, trying to go for like 3 minutes on camera because we want to get to everybody and not be up late because I want to go watch that Bills game. And don't mention the Bills. I have no idea, and it's going to be a great game. Probably was, but don't mention it. Okay, I'm serious. Okay, so we're going to go to a quick break and go to the prompt lines, so sit tight and we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. We have our Prompt Poems editor, Katie Dozier, here to share the poetry. Hey, Katie.
Hey, I have to say how much I enjoyed that. I love Denise Duhamel. I have to say, too, I might not have become a poet if I hadn't found her book because of Barbara Hamby when I was an undergrad and thought, oh, my God, I can write about Barbie dolls. So with her book, Kinky, of course.
Yeah,
So,
she's a gateway poet for so many people, I think, because just wonderful poet in so many ways. Like she makes poetry so fun too,
and so creative, endlessly creative. So
yeah. Well, the prompt for this week is to think of a word that transports you back to childhood and give the poem that title. So what did you come up with?
All right, so I wrote this on the plane this morning at about 5 a.m. So that was fun. All right, so ragamuffin. My step-grandmother would say it sometimes when she picked me up in her white Taurus in the rain for a Friday night sleepover. And every time she was right. My unbrushed hair, a nest for my middle child syndrome thoughts, my t-shirt polka-dotted from 3 grape popsicles I chomped while climbing a tree. Wait, this makes her seem unkind, the way any passed-over piece of wood can be whittled down to just a splinter. Her white halo was pin-curled to her head, freshly set under a plastic hairnet bow-tied beneath her chin. Unlike everyone in my family, her eyes were brown. Unlike everyone else's in my family, they flew down to me. Ragamuffin. The R, a razor, an unopened clam or oyster. Today, I walk along the boardwalk, having curled my hair, and everyone seems to smile back. So, with this, I smile back at her.
Oh, that was just such a wonderful poem. I love that story about your...
Called her ragamuffin.
Yeah, that is such a great word, ragamuffin, too.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, she really did teach me, though, that, you know, if someone's making an effort to look nice, it's nice to look nice, and it was a valuable lesson, you know?
Well, that was a lesson that I wish I learned much earlier, to be honest, as I'm walking around like a scrub all over the place.
I do pretty well these days, at least. A happy ending. So what do you have?
Okay, so my poem is this right here. And it was weird. It was weird coming up with a word because no words, I don't know, jumped out at me.
Uh-huh.
And then for some reason, this word did in this memory. So this is the word dog.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't sure what it said.
Yeah, well, okay. So this is it, dog. That's what I called when called on to call it something. The mixed breed mutt my father brought home from the back of a truck. Tucked inside the bright orange lining of his army surplus bomber jacket, it squirmed and wormed its way up his chest the whole drive like a laugh he was trying to hold. The puppy's eyes were half closed. At 5, I thought it clever to name a thing the thing that it was, what it would be. I must have felt like Adam standing before the first animals, my hand on the folds of fur at the top of his tiny head. You were dog, I said to the dog, proud with that power. My father thought it was funny and filled his first bowl with a beer. Dog was mostly lab, as black as its shadow and half as bright. All day he would eat the ivy poking through the neighbor's fence, which made him sick, and then lick at the soft pile of his sickness. He was the kind of dog that would chase a ball but never learn to bring it back. Now, 40 years later, he returns with that word anytime I see it written down. Dog, that small shame of its tail trailing behind. How it would wiggle beneath him even as he cowered, even as he came head low when my dad would call out, "Dog, get over here." So that is dog. And yeah, it's true. It's not really memory of childhood, but every time I see dog, there's this weird childhood memory. Like literally just with the word dog. And so there you go.
Well, for the record, I still think it's fun to name the thing exactly what it is. So nice name there.
Well, thank you very much. All right. So that was dog. Okay. So let's see what we have. Let's go first to Siobhan Brownlee over in France. Let's see what Siobhan's got for us today.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Siobhan. Great to see you.
Yep. So my poem has got 2 titles. It's called Moom, or The Third Week of 2025.
All right. Well, okay.
When I was
Sorry. I'm a little slow on the draw today, Siobhan.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay. Here we go. Yeah.
Moom, or The Third Week of 2025. When I was a child, I sometimes called her Moom. She was a glamorous and artistic heron wearing elegant pastel-colored outfits that she designed herself. Hormones surged in her every month, pushing pain into her breasts and stomach. Wee chicks would rush up for a cuddle. No, she says, arms hiding her hurting front. shutting herself off. I've always thirsted after them. Are there hugs in the world this week? The TV screen shows orange-sparked wildfires clutching Los Angeles. 9 grappled women have laid complaints about Father Pierre, saintly founder of Emmaus Charity. In China, the government is providing incentives for procreation, but couples are reluctant. In brackets, when I was 8, my mother told me babies are made by a special hug. But in the playground, Russell T said it was about putting willies in noo-noos. Close bracket. Smiles, though cautious in the Middle East. A ceasefire. Soon, 33 Israeli hostages and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be home in the arms of their own. A YouTube video announces that in the future, there'll be 2 categories of humans: millionaire business owners with a fully AI workforce and everyone else on universal basic income. Are bots good at hugging? Saturday morning, end of the week's come, and it's below 0. Crazy to think of going swimming on such a day, but there we are, walrus with bald head and white moustache, Jay at 72, freestyling lengths. The pool's warm water is clasping us. I am as happy as the embryo that once was in Moom's belly.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love the way that poem moved and twisted and turned its way through. A lot of leaps in that, in the narrative arc. Thanks so much for sharing that, Siobhan.
I just wanted to say quickly that I've got a change in my work schedule, so I won't be able to come to the prompt lines for about 2 months. And so just the opportunity to say a huge thanks to Katie and Tim. It's been so great, and all the poets and also the people in the chat. I sort of joined the group in April, and it's just been wonderfully inspiring. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of months' time. So
thanks. I hope we'll still see you on Facebook, at least in the prompt lines group.
Okay, I'll try to join. Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Yeah, thanks so much, Siobhan. Yeah, and thanks for being here. We'll look forward to seeing you in a little bit. Yeah. That was Siobhan Brownlee with Moom, or Third Week of 2025. Yeah, it's so great to have Siobhan, staying up late with us. We'll be missed the next couple months.
We will miss her for the next couple months.
All right. Well, let's go next to a first-time caller. David Boos is here, and it's always fun to have first-timers. Hey, David.
Hi. Great to be here. Loved the interview.
Yeah. Great to have you. So, where are you calling from?
So I'm in Spokane, Washington, Eastern Washington. So when I was growing up, my family had a pretty rustic cabin that we spent pretty much every summer weekend at. And so the prompt and the poem come from that memory. So
great.
Yeah.
So the poem is Wood Stove. After the scratch hiss of match head on iron, the acrid smell of last week's news, the snap, pop, and incense of cedar, after the crackle of dried fur on fire becomes a soft roar, inhaling air through open vents and exhaling smoke up the black throat of the chimney, after the plinks and clinks of warming iron and the dance of flames glanced through gaps in the rings of the cooktop, after the slide of the iron pan, the spit and sizzle of bacon, soft gurgle of the coffee burbling up in its little glass lighthouse, gradually darkening with each appearance until it is poured strong and steaming into a cup, there would be my father, standing, as I now stand, flat steel turner in his hand, eyeing pale circles of batter on the jet black griddle, watching as the edges dried, bubbles formed and popped, leaving cratered moonscapes that said they were ready. Then the blades so quick it seemed like a trick, so smooth the cakes didn't move, and the flip, soft sizzle on the griddle and the golden crust upturned. Swish, plop, sizzle around the griddle, ending with the hardest, the one in the middle. He was never happier than here, warmed by iron and coffee, his quiet dedication to perfection and delight when things came out right, his calm confidence as provider, dishing out golden circles of love on plates for his waiting family.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love the sounds. Like, how exciting to listen to, and the description. Like, I really felt in the moment of that. Yeah, and the internal rhyme and both the description of the sounds themselves is musical on like every level. So
Yeah,
Well,
definitely a great poem, David.
Yeah.
It started out as a poem about a wood stove and ended up being a poem about my dad.
Yeah,
Aw.
yeah. Well, really, the details are just wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, hope you come
Thank you.
back soon.
Yeah.
Will, thanks.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. It was David Boone with Wood Stove,
Hmm.
or Boos, I should say. David Boos with Wood Stove. All right, and let's go next to Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiana, great to see you.
Good to see you too. The word I chose was trolls because when we were kids, we had a basement, and my brother and I made up trolls that lived down there, and then we were very, very, very scared of them the entire rest of the time we lived in that home.
Aw.
Oh, that's great.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and read it. Trolls. The damp basement where we skid around corners on rollerblades, parade past the pile of laundry below the chute, by the root cellar with its cold breath, between the old couch and the crafting drawers where Mom stores moldering fabric she's sure she'll use someday, there is a drain. The bane of the basement. Trolls, I tell my brother, shivering at them spying like goblins on Curdy and Irene. When knees meet pavement, the drain always wafts ill will our way. So that day in spring, when I fling open the door to run down for a fresh box of cream of wheat, and my feet splash at the bottom, I smell something rotten. I run back. They may be waiting to attack. That's not a potato full of eyes. That's a slobbery surprise that will grab me by the hair and drag me there down the drain to the main sewer. I grapple with the upstairs door, ignore Mom trying to calm me. She sighs. Calls the plumbing guys who say, it's roots. A tree sipping from the foul stench. That's why it's dying, I think. Anything that would drink from the troll's basement sink is bound to blight. They send a metal snake down the hole. I watch it hiss and roll, a whole handful of stringy hair. Still roots, Mom reassures, searching for cures for my fear. The ankle-deep sludge surges down the dark throat, an unwound tangle still dangling from the silver serpent. A final burp, and it's only minor stinks that booby-trap our roller rink. Now, I imagine standing at the brink of the French Broad River, gaping at the hand of God that's torn down a mountainside. The smell I've tried to forget. Are they here, the noodle-boned, two-toned man-eating monsters? Childhood fear pricks up my neck. I know better than to nurture the thought, but nature has caught me, knocked me for a loop with all this tangled goop along the banks. There is no steel snake to rake up these remains, no rollerblade rush to evade the pungent air, no spare parts to replace this ever-gaping space. Perhaps the trolls were never bodies of skin and bones, but bodies of water drooling. Maybe they've demanded tolls in the form of all these souls they swallowed. No one can control a troll or a raging water hole.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. The music and the images, as always, and the energy. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank
Christina.
you.
I know these trolls are way different than either the ones from Tolkien or the ones on like the Pixar. They were always very scary to us.
Yeah, well, definitely. They definitely come to life there in a frightening way.
Yeah, I'm glad we don't have a basement.
Yeah. Yeah, I was terrified of the basement when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I don't
you
know.
were.
Those the New York basements, all the sump pump going off all the time. Who knows what's down there?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much as always, Christiana. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Christiana Doucette with Trolls. And let's see. Next, we should go to Carla Schwartz.
Hello.
Hi, Carla.
Hey, Carla. Great to see you.
I'm happy to be here, and what a great night. And I have a little Hibinish kind of poem,
Nice.
and my word is a number. So it's 11, 22, 63.
Oh, okay.
Back then, it would have been Pathmark or Grand Union, the aisles filled with white bread, Oreo cookies, Yoo-hoo, and Campbell's soup. Seated in the cart, I came up higher on my mother, closer to her head. They made the announcement, the supermarket, on their rudimentary PA. normally used to tell the shoppers 5 minutes more or on aisle 6, Prince Spaghetti on special. But this afternoon, before my sister came home from school, President Kennedy was shot. President Kennedy is dead. Gigantic bullet draped in flag, democracy upended. My mother's lips began to tremble, mine in unison. I reached for her hand, the first time I saw my mother cry. Hearing he's dead, I grasped my mother, our salty fingers.
Yeah, really well told there, Carla. Thanks for sharing that and the date that will live in infamy. Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting take to make the word a date. I think that's really a cool way of twisting it around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Carla. Yeah, it was Carla Schwartz with 11/22/63. Let's go next to Rod Deasy.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Hey, great to see you.
Good. Glad to be back. I missed a week. I was busy getting up, pen in hand, the Maryland Writers Association Literary Journal.
Oh, well, we definitely missed you. Glad you're back.
Okay, yeah. Short poem this week. I should preface it by saying when I grew up on a 5-acre plot with 3 houses on it, our house, my grandparents' house, and my great-grandparents' house. And the rest of the land was covered with a small orchard and a lot of willow trees because we had a little cricket bat factory. That was the family business, making cricket bats. And so we needed cricket bat willow to make the cricket bats. So all of these trees were planted Carulia, cricket bat willow. Oh, wow. And they're very long, clean trunks and very tall trees. Anyway, so my backyard, I was an only kid until my sister was born when I was 8. It was a small village and there weren't any other children my age. And so I was by myself a lot of the time. And I used to go and hang out in the old gravel pit where among the willow trees. And my word is willows because whenever I see a willow tree, it reminds me of my childhood. Yeah, and there's one other thing I would mention. Denise mentioned it earlier on that as you grow older, your cultural references tend to grow old with you, and people don't recognize them. So I mentioned Charles Lloyd's Forest Flower, which was a jazz album which came out after he played at Monterey in 1967. And it was the first jazz album to sell more than 1 million copies. So it was pretty big in the day. And of course, he's still playing now. He's 87, I think.
Oh, wow.
Very, very well respected jazz musician, crosses genres a lot. Last year, he made an album with what's her name? Lucinda Williams. But he plays with a lot of people. Anyway, that is my go-to starter album for getting me in the mood to write.
Well, that's good to know. And Katie's got her.
Anyway, I'll get to the poem. Well, I promise. Yeah. It's only a short poem, so.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Talking about it. Willows. Growing up, in search of serenity, I sat among the tall willows in the old gravel pit. The rustling of their narrow leaves in the easterly breeze was persistent, but soothing. In search of serenity growing old, I sit before my laptop screen, put on Charles Lloyd's Forest Flower, and juggle words. Sometimes lobbing a few up close to the ceiling to circle the room, as they wait for a lackluster line to land it. Often, the overtones are honey. Other times, alliteration tastes like chocolate. Sometimes, behind the saxophone, I hear willows.
Oh, yeah. Great ending there. I love that. And great story, too, about the willows. That's one of the things I love when we have these kind of prompts that we get to, learn more about, all the Rattlecast crowd. And
my sneaky ambition in getting good poems and good stories. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. That was great to hear. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rod.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it was Rod DC with Willows. Let's go next to Douglas Silver.
Hi, Tim and Katie.
Hello. Hey, Doug. Yeah, it's been a bit.
Yeah.
It's great to see you. It's been, maybe a month or more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I come here and just stay on YouTube because I don't have a poem to share. So I just come and hang out, and as you suggest we should do, and enjoy our colleagues and entertainment and erudition. Those are my two of my favorite things.
Well,
I try to write a couple of comments. Thank you. So this one called out for a high bun as well. I think pretty much everything calls out for a high bun nowadays.
Now you're speaking my language. Yeah.
I know. That's a Katie quote, I think, right there. Just, the autobiographical stories. And in a high bun, I learned here, it's such a cool format for so many poems. My poem is called Snow. Snow. Those early morning school days when I woke to a surprising quiet. Our mother saying, "Go back to bed, it snowed all night. No school, it's a snow day." But we couldn't, my brother and I, go back to bed, and especially not back to sleep. The whiteness outside, a weighted blanket covering everything in silence. Except tiny birds singing back and forth from bird feeder to snow-covered branches, probably like us, a bit confused. But our confusion quickly turns to joy as we get dressed in every layer we can find until our bodies are twice their normal size, out into the front yard, making and throwing snowballs, rolling and making a snowman, asking our mother for a carrot for his nose, and pulling the black tiny stones from the rock wall for eyes and a curved pine tree branch for a slight smile. Bigger branches for arms, and maybe a few fingers. All day long, nothing to do but all this, and lots of hot chocolate. A gift of time unexpected, a surprise party thrown from the sky.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
I love the concept of a surprise party thrown from the sky as snow, and it speaks to us because we're supposed to get snow in Houston, and my oldest daughter is so excited about this. Having grown up mainly in Florida, she's basically never seen snow. So.
Yeah, I grew up in Cape Cod, and even as a teacher, well, here in Seattle, I was a school teacher for 27 years, and I still love the snow. We don't get too many in Seattle. Snow days are just as good for teachers as they are for kids,
Yay!
It's like, yay!
Yeah, well, that is wonderful.
The gift of unexpected time. Nice to see you both.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks, Doug. Glad you're
thanks
here.
so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
And that I will look at snow very differently. Maybe from now on. Because
surprise party thrown from the sky is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie and Tim. Good to see you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that was Douglas Silver with Snow. And next, let's go to another first-time caller who I know just flew in from the Pacific University Writing Program.
Yes.
Mara Dowdle is here.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. I've been an avid listener for so long, and usually this is like my kids' bedtime and all that, but I told Katie I'm going to make time because I just enjoy this community so much, and this is such a wonderful thing you all do in addition to all the wonderful interviews and education with that. So yeah,
I'm so glad you're here. And I have to say, too, I know you didn't get much sleep today because we were on a shuttle bus at 2:30 a.m. together.
Oh, my. Okay, so when I talked to you a little earlier and you were like, so I finished my residency reviews and my poem on the plane, I said, I've got half an hour. I got to write a poem. I couldn't let you down, Katie. All right, but it was actually super fun. Having to write something quickly. So my poem is called I Dear. And if you are from the New England or New York area, you may have heard this word before. I Dear. Impossible to separate them, the man and the word. You could take him out of his grandpa's basement, away from his aunt's house in Amityville, years before the horror movie made it famous. He could put himself through college, play hide and seek with his blue collar roots, and still the word followed him like the sting of the nun's rulers on his knuckles. His diction, proper English, except for this one little term that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be concept or affection. It escaped straightening, stayed perennial as his comb over. To remove that little clinging R, to make idea pure again, would be like amputating him from him.
That's really great. Yeah. And I knew you were up for the challenge because, we were in multiple classes together and you always banged out a great poem in like 15 minutes. So I'm really glad you chose to tonight.
Well, thank you. And that was about my father. So that's definitely a word that emblematic of my childhood.
Yeah, well, that was wonderful. Yeah, to write that in 30 minutes is great too.
Very impressive.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Really
I'm
fun.
Glad that you're going to be joining us some too.
Thank you, Katie. I know.
Yeah, thanks so much. So where are you calling from? We didn't ask that to start.
Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. And I hear you have like a reading series there that you do?
Yeah, I do. It's called I Wish You All Could Come, or that, it was Zoom, but it's called Weave and Spin. And it's a monthly reading series. We mostly feature historically underrepresented artists, but just a lot of local folks too. So we do mostly poetry, which honestly, selfishly, I started it because I wanted to have a really good reading series I could go to. So I just made it.
Well, I love that reason. That's fun.
Yeah,
and we have a great open mic afterwards, which I don't know what it is, but and you probably experienced this too, having an amazing poet or writer come perform first seems to somehow inspire people to bring their game on the open mic. So that's a really wonderful part of it too.
Yeah, well, it definitely does. We can attest on the old Rattlecast.
Especially now that you're here.
Oh, stop.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Guys.
Yeah, Maro.
Thank you.
And hope you come back soon and find a chance. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, that was Maro Dowdle with idea, which I love that word too.
Yeah.
All right, let's go next to Dick Westheimer.
Hey, all.
Hey, Dick. Great to see you.
Yeah.
Good to
you get a
see
haircut?
you. And it's wonderful to see the two of you side by side again. With your twin microphones. It's
yeah, we are twinning. I didn't quite realize that's true.
It's a matching zooming ensemble. Well, I know you have a long line here, so I'll just Katie, when you do these childhood prompts, it's like childhood so fucking long ago. It's like how can I zoom back there? But it happened again. So I appreciate it. Tim, I sent you a revision. One I sent you two. The second one has revision in the subject.
Yeah. Revision in the subject. Yep, got it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thunder. Like a great brown bear, it shakes me by the shoulders and stalks me into the basement stairwell. Why am I afraid, still here in the near dark as the yellow paint peels, and I am caught in that trough between the rooms above, with their couches and parchment lampshades casting their tender light, and the room that devours the shadows below. Mary Emma, the black maid who raised me, is shaken too. She's mumbling and afraid and away from her man who works the swing shift and their kids home on their own. And she's here with me, our fear, another vine that climbs us both. There are no bobcats, no volcanoes erupting here, just the fact of lightning we cannot see, the thunder, a pack of moose marauding on the roof. The storm abates, and I don't want to leave. My head rests on Mary Emma's knee, and she strokes my hair. It's so pretty, she says. The air smells magnetic. The basement is dark. One more flake of lead paint peels and falls to the floor. Mary Emma's baby is at home in his crib and cries himself to sleep. Mary Emma and I climb from the stairwell and watch TV.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a turn in that poem. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, really strong stuff, Dick, as always is. Great poem, great description. I love that line about the vine, too. Fear another vine that climbs us both.
I love the concept of the moose on the roof. I think next time Lizzie's afraid, I'm just going to say, maybe it's just moose on the roof, Lizzie. You know?
But it's not bobcats or volcanoes, right?
No.
Yeah.
But you might implant that in her head like it was in my head when I was a kid. Okay.
Yeah, well,
Thank you all so much. I appreciate you, and good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dick. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was Dick
bye.
Westheimer with Thunder is his word that brings back childhood. Let's go next to Sean Evaningo Sanders. And we do have a lot of people on the line still. So it's going to be, really fun, full crowd here. Good week for it, too.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Pretty good. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah,
good
great
to see you back, Katie.
Oh, thanks.
This prompt, my goodness, a flood of words came and I didn't know what to write about. And so I went for a walk and I walked past an elementary school and the kids were at recess. So I chose the word recess.
Oh, wow, that's great. Well, what a great inspiration. It's wonderful. Very live action poet.
Yeah. Recess. Playground, merry-go-round, swirled and spun us, and in the blink of an eye, we're in junior high. I miss those analog days, white squares of a Lisa Frank calendar full of rainbow possibility. Loose leaf paper with its pale blue lines taunting my imagination. A portable cassette deck pushing its red button to make a mixed tape for my crush. How I cradled his yearbook photo against my chest and shadow danced in the dark. The drop of the next record, that hiss before the first note, suspended me like a mosquito caught in amber. I held my breath without a worry I'd ever run out of time.
Oh, that is great. Yeah, with the mixtapes, all those memories.
Yeah, all those details. Lisa Frank, how cool was that stuff? My gosh. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking us back too, Sean. That was great.
Thanks.
You bet. Thanks.
Yeah. That was Recess by Sean Evaningo Sanders.
Such great poems tonight.
I know,
just
really.
love
They're just
being here and getting to listen to everybody's poems that they
are so
write
good.
to my prof, which is really nice.
I do think about this every week now too. That like eventually we could just have only the prompt lines people in Rattle, and that could just be
be all of Rattle.
Yeah. It might be the case.
Be
someday.
a little bit easier.
It would, yeah. Just stop submissions. Just. All right, let's go next to, speaking of someone in Rattle, Hemet's got a poem coming up for the next issue. Hey, Hemet, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Great to see you.
You too. Thank you.
So what do you have for us?
I don't know if you it's another rant for a change. I don't know if you know this word in the States though. Are you familiar with the word wog?
It's one of those I've heard a few times, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, it's a racial slur. It's a racial slur used in Australia. Used to be used in Australia, not so accepted anymore against Mediterranean and Europeans. So I remember that from childhood. Wog. I hear the sharp intake of breath at the word. Ha. Yesterday you wasn't so cloaked in correctness. The playground, the bus, the streets you owned. I've run out of fucks to give. Nothing left to lay at your feet for approval. You put on your oversized robes and recline in your chambers, swinging your gavel in the air, mouthing words to spit should I happen into your court. Here is a cup for your spittle. Inside the word human cut from your collar. You'll bark now, a lone hound forever, begging for kindness from ogres and ghouls. I lift the lid on the worm farm in my mother's garden. Its pre-petrichor scent rankles my throat. Black spiders with thick bellies squint at the light and rear up, ready. I dry my hair in the mirror. Its coils hold your screwdriver words, well wound and waiting. I laugh at the silver appearing, a joke at the blonde wish I held to fit in your sunlit world.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, you called it a rant, but that was a great example of a turn and how important a turn is in a poem.
And how that does not count as a rant to me for sure, but a really good poem.
Yeah, that turn with I lift the lid is where it really takes off.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Hammett Mullock with a Wog. Let's go next to Stephen Croft.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Stephen. Great to see you.
Thank you. This poem is going to hark back to a time when I could not comprehend what a showcase showdown was, but I loved the theme song for The Price is Right, and I loved Bob Barker's voice. So this is called Ravioli.
That's quite the intro. I like that.
That definitely is, yeah.
On the living room's oval braided rug, I set the plastic train cars on their plastic track and imagined them moving. Told the night before a woman would come to stay with me, I woke while the louvered trailer windows were still dark and watched my parents, my mother in a blue dress I was unaccustomed to, talk and gather some things. There was a knock at the door. The woman was older than my mother, smiled, and seemed happy. I heard the sound of my father's dark, loud Mustang cranking, and I settled in on the rug for my Sinbad Jr. cartoon, always waiting for him to pull his magic belt and become strong, invincible, a word I was many years away from knowing. I hadn't heard sustained yelling before, but soon the smiling woman I last knew to be seated in the yellow chair behind me was screaming, telling me I was bad and doing something I didn't understand. All I knew was I was sitting, not understanding how hard she pulled my arm. Later, I pulled my mother's hand and moved across a brand new footpath to a door in the corner to learn a new word, closet. I heard the familiar music. Within a year, I would say The Price is Right. And I heard movement on the kitchen's linoleum like it was time for my mother to open the can. But I wanted her to hold it down first, for me to stare at the chef whose name I could not grasp, before my attention would be claimed by the warm, tomatoey word I did know. In the dark, I said, ravioli, as my eyes grew cold and melted.
Wow, what an interesting poem. A lot of turns and surprises in that one. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Ravioli by Stephen Croft. Let's see. Next, we'll go to another first-time caller. Suzanne Austin Hill is here.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi,
Suzanne. Hi there. How are you all doing this evening?
I'm doing great. So where are you calling from?
Calling from Ruskin, Florida.
Well, great. So glad to have you on.
Glad to be here. Originally from New York, but I would never say that I was from Florida. I always say I'm from New York and I live in Florida.
Well, we'll try to remember that.
And I was very much taken by Denise's first poem, particularly the word malarkey. I think that's just a great fun word. And her play on words with felonious Trump. My husband and I had a great conversation about that today as well.
Very fun.
So I want to share, my word is dinkies.
Right.
Dinkies. Dinkies. Lies. Black ones, real ones, big ones, white ones. Intent, malicious or benign. Consequence, serious or trivial. Benefit, liar or who is being lied to. Dinkies, words use uncommon. Words meaning not well defined. But according to my grandmother, colorless, concrete, sizeless. Intent, innocent, Consequent, number of Hail Marys varies. Benefit, none. A lie by any name is still a lie. Thank
Very
you.
cool. Yeah, it took a while to. It's one of those ones where I was like wondering what the word meant, and then it slowly reveals itself. Yeah, very fun poem. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for allowing me to share. Good to
Thanks,
be
hope
with you.
Come back soon.
Sure will. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, that was Suzanne Austin Hill with a great poem there, Dinkies. All right, and let's go next to another first-time caller, and Frank Modica. Or maybe Frank's been on before, but just not in a while. Hey, Frank, have you been here before?
I've never been here before, and actually my name is Modica. Modica is the Sicilian way of saying it. And I've been trying to kind of get caught up on all the Poetry Space podcasts, and through friends I found out about Rattlecast. And when I saw the prompt, one of the things I thought about were the kind of movies that I really liked watching as a kid, and I really loved creature features on Saturday night that I would watch with my family. And one movie that really sticks in my mind is The Day the Earth Stood Still. And I always worried if I could remember the secret code that could save my life and save the world. So here's my poem, Klaatu.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fear for an adult, something concrete and actual, Parkinson's, cancer, ALS, a heart attack. But for a child, fear is imagined and existential. The ravenous monster under the bed, waiting to pull you under, the insistent tapping of a werewolf on the bedroom window. When a silver of light slices through a gap in the curtain this cold winter evening, I remember the nightmare, the imagined light reflecting off the polished surface of the formidable alien robot Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still. The visor opens, the laser powers up. I shiver and shake, clasp my rosary beads. Hope I save the world and save myself. Hope I remember the words. Klaatu, Barada, Niktu. Thank you for this opportunity to share my poem with you.
Oh, yeah, that was wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that.
I love where you went with that. That was so creative. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I've actually never seen The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I don't know. We need to watch it.
Oh, really?
Feel.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it. Sounds like you love it. So we're going to have to check it out. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Frank. Yeah, that was Frank Modica with Klaatu. We're saying that right? Klaatu? All right, and go next to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hi.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's a great night. I have a poem called Comics. I'm not sure it's really finished, but this is what I was able to get done.
Great, good.
It's another basement poem.
Ah, the basement's coming up a lot tonight, yeah.
Yeah. Once in a while, my mother would send me to the basement to tidy the boxes of comics I kept there. I'd pass through the extra living room where a couple of times a visiting priest had donned his vestments and said mass. To me, the basement was consecrated to the imagination. Its wood-paneled walls bore dark, scratchy spots, stegosauruses, and dragons. On my way to the comics, I passed through a little extra kitchen. The basement must have been some grandma's suite before us, with its pantry full of Campbell's mushroom soup. Make a right and you pass into the unfinished part with its pockmarked slate-gray floors, except where my mom had once spilled sparkly silver paint. She cried and told me to remind her of that if she ever bawled me out for making a mistake. The unfinished part was colder, unless in winter you walked close to the boiler, with its hatch, which Mom had told me was the door that Santa used to exit the chimney, since we didn't have a fireplace. Then, past the shelf with a jar of sea glass, colorful and strange, there was my father's workbench, rarely used, but cluttered with things he thought he'd fix one day. Under that were my boxes of comics. They were super full, and the cardboard was crumbling. I'd sit on the floor to comb through them, ostensibly to sort them, cull them, maybe move some to a new box. But I'd linger to revisit the highlights, like the one with the JLA and Phantom Stranger and Red Tornado. I'd been so excited by that one that I ran into the house and tumbled downstairs to the basement.
Aww.
That's great, yeah.
I want to know if you still have your comic books.
I do not. Well, yeah, barely any of them. I think I sold them all in high school for hardly any money, and they'd probably be worth something now.
I did that with the stamp collection I inherited, so I can relate, unfortunately.
Well, if my mom will remind me tomorrow, I still have baseball cards up in her attic.
Nice. Pretty sweet. Gonna cash those in.
Definitely. Yeah. But that was great. Thanks so much, Erin. I love imagining that little Brian.
Yeah, so sweet.
It was very easy to picture.
And I love the detail about the spilled paint, too. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Right.
So Brian O'Sullivan with comics. Next, let's go to Lisa Seidenberg.
Hey.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Great to see you.
Thank you. Well, a little bit of setup. This is about a trip I took with my family as a little girl to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I had my mother was kind of person that was always scouring the New York Times travel section for some special trip, and this was like suddenly they were going to allow a group of Americans to go. Of course, you can't do that today for various reasons. But so my poem is about the hotel. It's called The Metropole. Okay, so the Metropole. What I remember of Moscow was the in-tourist van with a so-called tour guide who escorted my family to sites like Lenin's Tomb or Red Square. But my favorite spot was the hotel room at the Hotel Metropole. It had tall, majestic curtains that stretched to the ceiling like a tiptoed ballerina at the Bolshoi Ballet. Those curtains were perfect for hide and seek, or searching for spyware like cameras or mics tucked in the folds, for surely the KGB had bugged our room to hear the chatter between my sister and me. My favorite TV show at the time was Boris and Natasha. The stubbly, bearded Boris was always messing up, but not the more savvy Natasha, statuesque in her ebony gown. And who could resist that accent? They were the darker version of Sonny and Cher, like Russian punk rockers. In college, I did my fashion best to be Natasha, wearing skyscraping boots towering over my shorter, rotund boyfriend. He made a passable Boris, and in amorous moments, he was a swarthy Russian spy. But I didn't tell him that. It was my secret to own, like a camera in a curtain.
Oh, that was great. What a great memory that was. Brought back to life. Thanks for sharing that, Lisa.
Embellished.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was Lisa Seidenberg with The Metropole. Oh, great. And another first-time caller. A good number of first-timers today.
We
Melody
like that.
B is here. Melody Bonilla.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can. Yeah, great to see you, too. Where are you calling from?
Calling from Maryland, Catonsville, Maryland.
Oh, great.
Nice.
All right. Well, so what do you have for us tonight?
So growing up, my mom is Italian, and that made food a huge presence in our home. So my poem is titled Sauce.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, it's going to make me hungry then. I'm
Yeah,
hungry.
we are
got dinner in
hungry.
the oven.
That's good. This is our hors d'oeuvre.
Yeah.
All right, here goes. Sauce. Italian mint, homemade aroma, sizzling sausage early morning, sautéed garlic with onions chopped, no garlic press. She peeled each clove against her thumb, rolled meatballs gently plopped stovetop in bubbling sauce, cooked slow, routinely stirred to stop the bottom burning. Pounds of pasta heaped on plates, my sister scarfed spaghetti water falling, eliciting Dad's reproach as I looked on in silent horror. She never seemed to mind the confrontation, talked back even, while I quietly used my spoon to twirl as I was taught. Each disentangled forkful turned, conglomeration of noodles to mouthful of disquiet.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Definitely.
Yeah.
I really do. The prompt is so fun because it's great to hear all these memories from everybody.
I love the spaghetti water falling. Like it really, I can see that motion. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks
Well,
for letting me share.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. I hope you come back soon.
Yeah.
Will do.
Yeah, that was Melody Bonilla with Sauce. Next, we will go to Jeremy McKay.
Okay. I was going to tell Melody, great job. Great job, Melody.
Well, you just
I'll
did.
tell you.
Yeah, thanks.
Every time I
That
see
way.
you, Jeremy,
I was going to read it. Yes?
I have to think of Mr. Jelly Roll because I love how you read that poem too, and it really stuck with me.
Oh, God, I should have done more with that. Okay. My word is fluffernutter.
Great word.
I grew up in New England. It's a fun word. I'm obsessed with fluffernutter. So,
do you know what
memories
fluffernutter
of
is,
fluff,
or is that like a
memories of
New England
fluffernutter
kind of thing?
I don't know what it is. It's like a candy kind of or something.
It's a sandwich.
Oh.
I think I explained some of it in my poem.
Okay.
But,
But yeah, definitely. It was not my favorite sandwich, but it was my brother's favorite sandwich. You'll see why.
They only have it in New England because marshmallow fluff only exists in New England. Every place else is marshmallow cream.
No, that's interesting.
That's educated.
Yeah.
So I can do a whole chapbook. I think I can do a whole chapbook on marshmallow fluff.
That's great.
Well, we'll see. Let's see how this goes first.
Okay.
Okay. I sent 2 versions. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I've got the second one. No problem.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Fluffernutter. On TV, when Tom Terrific put on his thinking cap, there was always a Fluffernutter commercial. It showed the correct way to make a Fluffernutter. It must have had a 1/4 inch of marshmallow fluff on it. I tried to get my mom to make them that way. I don't think we were watching the same commercial. She continued to make Fluffernutters her way. A lot of peanut butter and very little fluff. That's not in there. It was better than leftover pot roast vegetables. One day, she invented the road trip fluffernutter. Instead of spreading the ingredients separately, she mixed peanut butter and marshmallow fluff in a single bowl and created the fluffernutter spread. She could make 8 sandwiches in half the time. A lifesaver if you had 400 kids to feed. The spread was sometimes watered down. No marshmallow fluff was spilling out of the crust. The sweetness reminded me of a TV fluffernutter, served with a side of Ruffles and paired with Kool-Aid. The compromise on appearance did not affect the quality of the fun we had with simple picnic food.
That's great. Really fun bringing back that fluffernutter. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jeremy.
Thanks.
Jeremy McKay with a fluffernutter.
I feel confident Lizzie would enjoy.
I think she would. I think we're gonna make sure she doesn't watch this episode.
Yeah, she'll only want to eat those.
All right. Let's go next to Nancy Tennell.
What a night this has been.
It has been, Nancy.
An imagination celebration, and I was so glad everybody took me back to my childhood with all of their memories. But I had one thing. I'll preface this just by saying when I was 6, I was bedridden I was ill for a slightly longer time than most children are ill. So I also decided not to mention the trigger other than in the title, the toy that triggered all this memory. But I also was very bored having to stay in bed.
Aww.
But the poem is called The Viewmaster. As a 6-year-old confined to bed with hopscotch or kickball no longer allowed, I received a gift from a family friend that placed a new world in the palm of my hand. A click with my thumb and I could travel down a rabbit hole to Wonderland to be with Alice, playing croquet with flamingo mallets. Coming to the aid of a nervous white rabbit. I imagined shrinking to enter that scene, climbing into its vivid, too real 3D. Afraid the Queen of Hearts might come for me, but determined to join the Mad Hatter for tea. I desperately wished it, but of course it couldn't be. We have to leave childhood, abandon our fantasies, but the child within would gladly take the lead to help us recapture our pretendings, our daydreams.
Oh, that was wonderful. Yeah, love that summarized at the end beautifully. Thanks for sharing that. I love the Viewmaster too.
Yeah, the Viewmaster was super cool.
It was a little click.
The click was so satisfying.
It was. There was something. It's like there's no steak without the sizzle or whatever. It's the click on the Viewmaster that really did it.
Well, Viewmasters were great, and it was a Disney Alice in Wonderland version on that reel, and it was so vividly colored. I just would have given anything to be able to climb through the eyepiece of the Viewmaster.
Very
imagination.
Cool.
Well, you helped us climb through the eyepiece. We did it in this poem, I think.
You did. Thanks so much for sharing that. Yep. It was Nancy Tennell with the Viewmaster. Let's go to Chelsea McClellan next.
Hello.
Hey, Chelsea.
Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. So what do you have for us?
Well, one of the first memories that came to mind was at the campground that my grandparents built and owned and ran. We used to hide in this giant bush in the middle of it where it was kind of dead and play spy. And so I went with the word middle. So this is gazelle, or how do you say it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we argue about this so there's a lot of people that say guzzle. Then some people swear it's still gazelle. And other people say guzzle.
Yeah.
So it's up to you which camp you want to be in.
I go with guzzle. I'm in the not as beautiful sounding camp.
Brian O'Sullivan would definitely go guzzle with his guzzle.
I think it's okay either. You know, the important thing is you're writing it.
Exactly, and I love the form too. So I'm looking forward to hearing the poem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I profusely apologize, but I cannot pronounce that the third way. So we'll go with the guzzle.
Nice. Yep. Chelsea's on my team.
Guzzle in the middle. Why does every kid play the monkey in the middle, the punchline, like there's something funny in the middle? Kids play I Spy on adults from the biggest bush, even though it's thick and thorny in the middle. Preteens watch grandmas pat swollen toddler bellies, listen closely to the jokes, feeling chunky in the middle. All our board games only have one winner, while we yell at babies, share the one key in the middle. Only kids and lucky kids sometimes burn and peel, left alone with their luck. It's way too sunny in the middle. Blankets become flying rugs for those who run away on horses in their forts, where it's Kentucky in the middle. Thin, dry-walled houses carry unresolved arguments thickly through each room, till sorries can't be seen in the middle. McClellan, pick your children up. Tickle them until you fill the house with breath. Only then fold the laundry in the middle.
That was wonderful. It's such a great use of the form with the slant rhymes too, all throughout. Beautiful music, and then the turn, the change in moods and tones. You really great job with the guzzle.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing
Thank
that,
you.
Chelsea.
Thank you.
Yeah, always such a pleasure. Yeah, Chelsea McClellan with a guzzle in the middle. Let's see. Audrey Friedman is up next.
Good evening.
Hey, Audrey. Yeah, good to see you.
Oh, good to be here. Just before I start reading, I have to say I was in such a hurry to type it. The third and fourth stanzas should have italicized words where my grandma speaks. So I hope that doesn't throw you. I didn't want to have to give you version 2.
No problem, thanks.
Okay. Watching Ed Sullivan with Grandma. Bummerkes, Grandma sighed as the Beatles came on the Magnavox's shiny screen. How could their mothers allow them to look this way? I could see the smile she tried to hide as she critiqued their haircuts. Probably done with a mixing bowl on their heads and a dull pair of sewing scissors. She emphatically shook her head, as if truly befuddled. Bummerkes, I say. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed to go out that way.
Oh, that's great. I love that last couplet especially. Yeah, that was wonderful. So fun.
It was so funny, but tried to mask it with this very serious demeanor. Oh, she was an imp.
Yeah, great memory and so well captured there. Thanks for sharing that, Audrey.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, it was Audrey Friedman with watching Ed Sullivan with Grandma.
I wish I could have a button of Audrey saying that and just press it.
We should. Yeah, we could get one of those huge soundboards.
The huge button, just press it.
That'd be great.
That was great.
All right. Let's see. Let's go to Carolyn Codd next. We got a good number of people left still, so glad you're sitting tight. Hi, Carolyn.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Hi. Well, like Dick was saying, my childhood is far, far away, so it's a little hard to think of anything in particular. And also, I've been working on some projects to counteract what's coming tomorrow, like immigration, and try to find out how to help. So I thought I have to think of something fun from my childhood. Even though my parents were pretty strict, we managed to have fun. So popped into my mind a thing that my sister and I used to do that had to do with a pun. So I called it Pun Fun.
That's great, yeah.
We were young, my sister and me. She about 3, me a little more. After a bath or before, we would escape to Grandma's room. Once there, naked, we excitedly proclaimed, "I'm a little bear." She was blind, so she didn't mind. We had great fun with a pun.
Oh, that's great. Such a nice
Aw,
memory
how
to
cute.
pull up. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carolyn. Thank you. Yeah, it was Carolyn Codd with Pun Fun. All right. Let's see. We also have Tina Denniclaw. Let's go to Tina next. Hi, Tina.
I am here. I'm here. I am here.
Yeah, great to see you.
I have to get myself organized.
Oh, I think you muted yourself. Hang on. Unmute. Are you back?
Okay. Oh,
There
good.
you go.
There.
You're back. Good.
Yay, we
okay.
can hear
Oh,
you.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oh, well, so great to see you both together. I do notice that your mics are pretty close together. So that makes you guys pretty close together.
That's
So it
good.
doesn't matter whether you have 2 mics or 1.
That's true.
It's the same thing. So cute.
Hopefully that
So
sounds
it's nice
better.
to see
Yeah,
you.
the goal is sound improvement.
it
That's
wasn't-
why
it
we
wasn't
love sharing
distant.
everything we possibly can, but the mics, it's better to not share. It turns
Yeah,
out.
it's hard to stay
I
equidistant.
think it's
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah, you just need a glass of wine for each of you now. So, yeah, and I had a parakeet when I was a teenager, and its name was Bird. And so yeah, and now I have a 19-year-old kitty who watches TV with us, and she is now at my shoulder watching you guys. So that's
Aw.
fun. I do have a poem that's a page full of quatrains. So yeah, we'll just it's self-explanatory. There's nothing complicated about my poem.
All right,
It's called Needlework.
Okay.
There's not enough tension on the bobbin. Grandma lifted the presser foot, pulled the fabric from under, and showed me big loops on the back side. She adjusted thread tension, then displayed perfect stitches, top and bottom. Early grade school, I stood next to Grandma's sewing machine in an open room that Grandpa built in the back of the house. A large plate glass window let in full light. Grandma made all of my clothes when I was young, with fabric from the remnants bin. Turquoise corduroys under a dark brown smock printed with blue lines. Christmas before my 2nd birthday. Toe-headed toddler. I'm so sorry. I held Thumbelina, my baby, in the band of one arm, tending a toddler task. Mid-teens babysitting money bought me quality sweaters off-season on sale in a fancy ladies' shop, and I sewed my own blue jeans. Years to come, I made Christmas dresses for my sister's daughters. Teddy bear prints, I'm so sorry, under red pinafores. This is a French knot. Aunt Shirley wrapped a tender woolen thread around her needle twice, dipped into the white knitted blanket, and made a coral rose. I was 5 and mesmerized. At 15, I filled a chambray shirt with embroidered flowers before it was cliché. It was my mother's hands that taught me crochet. When my junior high mind had other things to do, I stepped up for my generation's grandchildren, pumpkin hats and Christmas hats and round white caps for newborns, pink nipples at the back. My favorite blanket, 7 white bands, light rose and soft mint, made with the Jamie stitch. I watched my niece hold it up to see. Sorry.
Okay.
Letting it rest on her outstretched leg. My sister said, classic. Mom's wedding colors, Aunt Shirley's favorite stitch.
Oh, I love that ending. A great use of that last line, and beautiful pulling that memory back up.
Yeah.
We have a photograph too, Tina. So
I do.
We'll put this on the screen.
That would be wonderful. I appreciate that. That is, I've covered it up so I can't even see myself. So that is, I'm so proud of that hat. I invented the whole thing. It is an Elmer Fudd pumpkin hat.
Oh, wow.
It's the first time I ever made a stiff brim. And that is my cousin's youngest son.
Super cute.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I think you might have to start taking some orders.
Yeah, I would wear it as an adult. Is that normal?
Yeah. His mom took stitches out the back as he got bigger, so he could still wear it.
Yeah.
I love that. That was my after so many different hats, and I came up with that. So thank you.
That is so cute. Yeah, thanks for sharing that,
Thanks, Tina.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, that was Tina Dennettclaw with needlework. All right, and next up we have Amanda Harris.
Yes. Okay, so
Hey,
I
Amanda.
had seen
Yeah.
hi. So I had seen this big rush of people. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? All right. So my poem is Red. Okay. In another life, I am 7. In another word, I am redeemed, redeemable, fashioned into a thum that can be summoned, made real by the repeat of a word. The word today is red, but tomorrow it may be stun or leave. Sometimes the words are audible. Otherwise, they are faint. Often they are punishing. In another life, in another year, I am 7. Hospital rubber separates word from thought. Plastic clings to skin.
Wow, very interesting. And great way to dive right into that poem
Yeah,
and be
I
quick
love
with
that.
it.
Yeah. Great reading.
Thank you.
Yeah, that
Thank
was.
you.
It was red. Yeah, thanks for that. A lot of
Thank
energy
you.
there. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was Amanda Harris with red. And I believe we are wrapped up on the Zoom. Let's see. Oh wait, no, Jared Campbell. Jared Campbell's here.
There he is.
Hey, Jared.
Hello.
Sorry for missing you. There was a lot to flip through. We got you, though.
There's a lot of people today.
Yeah, there is. A great night of poetry.
We can't forget Prompt Poet of the Month.
We can't.
though.
We're saving him for the end,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
The
month is going by too quickly.
You gotta live it up. You have 11 more days.
Your reign is still supreme.
All right. So what was your word?
Yeah, so when I was very young, we lived in a house that was kind of at the top of a hill, and it had a small backyard with a chain link fence, and then beyond the chain link fence was just woods, and there were woods, and it sloped down from the hill down to a little creek, and me and my brother used to go out and play in the woods all the time. And in the woods there were garter snakes. Garter snakes. There's gold hidden in the leaf fall, blanketing the hill that slopes down to the tiny creek, living bands of gold and green and brown. Of all the childhood friends that slip like hopes through grasping, fumbling, growing hands, these will be the hardest to replace. Soft and dry as a designer purse with muscular life inside. So chase them while you can. In retrospect, your first meeting with wildness will be your sense of place.
Oh yeah, great last line. Really important point too. We have an image here along with it. What's that about?
Yeah, so that's I think a modern reproduction of a sculpture of a snake goddess that was found in Knossos, Crete. And apparently there was snakes played a role in their religion in ancient Crete.
Well, very interesting. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, beautiful poem.
Thanks,
yeah.
Jared. Enjoy the last 11 days of the month.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Jared. Always really fun. Is Jared Campbell with Garter Snakes. Mm-hmm. And now that is going to, let me double check. Okay, that is going to clear out the Zoom for tonight. Let's see. Let's do Ted Guevara's. If Ted is with us. And this is the image that he included. Some rain on the roof, perhaps? I wonder what his word's going to be. It's on a tin roof. Let's see. Zin is his word. I knew he was always going to throw us a curveball. I'm going to put this on too. So Zin. It's easy to love the rain when I hear the word Zin. I apply it on my deepest wounds now. It's like merthiolite with the pain before the healing. 2 words from the folds of my youth. The locals may have meant zinc, or as a child, the silence of letters was beyond my grasp. The pink of merthiolate unleashed from the cotton ball was certainly a fear developer. The value of its recuperation was drowned by noise. It must have rained hard one night when my mother was applying it to my no-stitch gash. The symphony from above lulled everything, even the going away of my father. It wasn't on her face. There only men sat. Very interesting. Zin for the zinc. Very always a surprise from Ted Guevara. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ted. And I think that's going to wrap up the show for tonight. Let's do the Sciku.
Good. I was afraid for a sec there was no Sciku when you said that.
No, there's
always has to be a Sciku.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the Sciku is based on this article right here. This is from Duke University. And this is one of those ones Dick is going to enjoy. You've probably already read this article. But if you can squeeze it in. This is from the university, or from Duke University. Dan Skolnick, that's the guy, shows that the universe is full of surprises.
No.
But really what it is the universe is expanding much faster than we thought it was. They call this Hubble tension, and that our models of the universe show less expansion than what it's actually expanding by observation. And so they don't really know, but they thought, well, maybe the measurements are wrong. And so there's this new technique that was used using supernova to judge with a lot more accuracy the distance to those stars, basically. And they use that as kind of like a scaffolding to like go back in time. If they know the distance the light was traveling, then they can calculate the expansion rate. And it turned out that the old measurements that they thought might be wrong based on the models are actually right. And so it must be the models that are wrong. And so there's just more going on than we realize. And somehow our, the lambda cold dark matter model of the universe, something's wrong about it. So that was what they discovered there at Duke University
I'm glad
this week.
It's still full of surprises instead of not full of any surprises.
It would
that
be,
would be a bad
or
headline.
not full of anything.
Yeah, that would be bad for all of us.
That would. All right, and so the Sciku based on that is the following. Hard freeze, too many flowers for one vase. Yeah. Hard freeze, too many flowers for one vase. That is your prompt. With the hard freeze coming up here.
Yeah.
I was inspired by the massive sign on the road. I don't know if you saw that. It was like tornado coming, but it was like freeze.
Yeah.
And so they really take it seriously out here.
Yeah, we are.
From New York and from the mountains. And
you're a bit scoffing, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know how you have to be a little crazy to be bothered by this.
Yeah.
We'll see how crazy they are in Texas. All right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that is the Sciku for this week. And that is the show for this week. The prompt, though, for next week is going to be this. Do you want to read it?
That is not the prompt.
Oh, no. Oh, no, I messed it up. Okay.
It's okay.
Well, hang on.
We're going to have to pull it up. Well, I'll go ahead while you're pulling it up and just say that the Poetry Space, after a little bit of a hiatus while we dealt with the moves and stuff, is going to be back on Friday. So, right, this Friday.
Yeah, this
Friday. Yes, it's going to be back, and we're going to be talking about, well, I guess we're about to read the slight spoiler, but we're going to be talking about after poems, which I'm really excited to explore the concept of an after poem. When is it too close? When should you actually put that it is an after poem? And I think there's a lot to discuss with that, so I'm really excited to get into it, and that'll be out this Friday.
Yeah, okay, and then the prompt, without further ado.
Now you pulled it up.
The prompt for this week is...
Okay, next week's prompt is to write a poem with a title that begins with Poem in Which I, after Denise Duhamel. For the next word in the title, find a random verb on randomwordgenerator.com. So if you just go on there, you can select the part of speech that you want the random word, and I'm going to hold you to being honest on that randomness. And you can, of course, continue on the title the way that Denise did too. So.
That's really interesting because the N+1 technique came up, and it's sort of a variant on the N+1 to use the next random verb.
Yeah, that's
and
funny.
Plug it in.
Yeah, that is funny. You're right. So
Yeah.
I think this will be a fun experience for all of us. It was so nice listening to Denise talk about her altered lives that she could have lived and instead lived them through poems, as we get to do ourselves.
Yeah, yes, it's going to be so much fun. It's once again, write a poem with a title that begins with poem in which I, after Denise Duhamel. For the next word in the title, find a random verb on randomwordgenerator.com. And if you go there, you can drop down. There's a little menu to change the part of speech. Pick a verb, and then you'll have the random verb. That's right. So that is the prompt for this week. And next week's guest is going to be Kim Adenizio. So another returnee. Kim Adenizio is wonderful. It was actually Dick said, we got to have Kim back. Her new book is amazing.
Oh,
Her new book
great.
is Exit Opera. And I'm looking forward to reading that. And, Kim, as you know, is one of my favorite poets.
Yeah.
So, her Philosopher's Club is like my top 5 books of all time. I love that one. But she's a great poet, of course. The feature in Rattle, I think, 69, it was the students of Kim Adenizio because she has so many. And her new book is going to be wonderful, Exit Opera. So that's going to be the next guest next week. Rattlecast 278 with Kim Adenizio. And the prompt using the in which with a random verb. Looking forward to that. That's Sunday, January 26th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we will talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.